This is the Thrive Podcast with Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. And now, Pastor Fred Jeff Smith.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive Podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and this is the 40th Thrive Podcast that we have done since the start of 2018. We greatly appreciate everyone who has taken the time to either view on YouTube or listen on iTunes. We have expanded the Thrive Podcast, just to let you know. It's not just one drop a week now, it's 5 drops a week. Still, the interviews drop on Monday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday we mix in excerpts and highlights from our worship experience and our Bible studies, and we would encourage you to listen to that as well on iTunes. That's not on YouTube, just on iTunes. But please tell others that the Thrive Podcast has expanded from 1 drop a week to 5 drops a week. And again, we thank you for your patronage. We thank you for your listening and for your viewing. Every now and then, drop us a line. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about and how we're doing. Fred Jeff Smith at cox.net. That gets directly to me. Fred Jeff Smith at cox.net. I'm very happy today to welcome as our guest Mr. Tim Wilkinson. Mr. Wilkinson has a very interesting story to tell. I was reading his bio this morning, and I find it very interesting, enlightening, and encouraging and inspiring. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us today, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you for having me, Fred. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here and the invite from you and Terrence. It's my pleasure.
Tell us your story. Rather than me read your bio, tell us your story, please.
Well, my story is ever evolving, but I was born here in Baton Rouge to a single mother, and when I was about 3 years old, my mother married my stepfather, who in turn moved us to Glen Oaks. I was essentially raised in Glen Oaks. I went to Glen Oaks High, graduated from Glen Oaks High. After I graduated from Glen Oaks High, I enrolled at Southern University, and I went to school there for a short period before ultimately I was involved in crime, and I was arrested, charged, and convicted for armed robbery. My conviction actually ended with first-degree robbery, but I had 21 counts of first-degree robbery when I was 20 years old.
How was that adjustment to your life?
I don't believe there's a word or words that can adequately describe it. It's literally a culture shock. When I was arrested, the first thing I did when I got to jail was I called my mom and I said, "When are you coming to get me?" And she said, "I'm not." And I think that was my first breaking moment. Mm-hmm. That was the cracking of my infrastructure, if you will, because my mother told me that she wasn't coming to get me, and it really threw me, because at that time, I wasn't raised in the streets. I wasn't raised to make the decisions that I made. Mm-hmm. And so, I expected better of her. I expected her to be mom, and, mom said, "Well, no, I can't be mom this time. I can be mom, but I can't be the mom that you want me to be. I can't come and get you. You got."
So back up just a second. Help me and help those who are listening and viewing to understand. You said you were not raised in the streets. You were not raised to live a certain kind of life. How did you fall into the life that you fell into that caused you to be arrested?
Circumstances, wrong set of friends. Literally, we hear this. Mm-hmm. We hear that, it only takes one time to make a bad decision, or we hear that, watch the friends that you associate with, because, right. But that is the truth. That is the truth. The entire situation that I went through was based on one. It started with me leaving my mother's house. Okay. It started with me saying, I want to be a grown man because mm-hmm. I'm of age and mm-hmm. I don't want to listen to you no more. Mm-hmm. I want to come in when I want to come in. If I go out and stay out, you say be home by 1 and I come in at 3, well, that's a problem. So I want to go where I can make my own rules.
Okay.
And it put me in a financial strain. And at that time, I had a friend from the neighborhood. I say a friend, but an acquaintance that I knew who was also going through a tough time. And, you know, he had this idea that, hey, we can go and rob this place, and it'll be easy, and we can get a few dollars, and that'll straighten this out. You know, and it went just like that. It was smooth. It was easy. It was no problem. No weapons. Just walked in, hand them a note, get the money, walk out. You know, the problem is it became an addiction because it was quick money. It was, you know, I want this and I need this now, and I know that I can get it this way, and I don't have to tell Mama I need to come back home. You know, I don't even have to work. You know, so it led to it was an addiction. It was an addiction. The fast, quick money, and you know, it took a turn for the worse. You know, I think one of the things, and I wish I had the article with me. I didn't think to bring it. When they put me in the paper, in the Baton Rouge Advocate, it was May 14th of 1999. And they described me as a gentleman armed robber. When I look back on that today, it's a clear indication for me to read that and say, well, you know, even then, who I am today was present within me, but I utilized it in the wrong manner.
So you politely ask people for their money.
You know, please, just give me the money. Just give me the money. Don't make this go south, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did you have any other habits that you were feeling? Was this
the only other habit I had? I gambled.
Okay.
Not substantial, but I did. You know, that.
Are we talking craps? Are we talking casino? Or
casino.
Casino.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, casino.
Okay.
That's it. You know, and a lot of folks, because you know, when you hear about somebody who allegedly robs 21 businesses,
right?
Places like, you know, the pizza shop and the ice cream shop.
Right.
You think drugs. I've never done drugs a day in my life, ever. Even in prison, I've never done drugs because I've just never had the desire, and I thank God for that. But that's never been a problem for me.
Yes, sir.
But people in the community that knew me thought, well, was he on drugs? What?
Right.
You know, what happened? No, it wasn't that. It was greed. It was selfishness. It was, I don't want to work. I want to get this money, this easy money, you know?
That's an interesting confession.
Why?
No drugs.
Ever.
Just greed.
Just greed.
Was it... Did you have a girlfriend that you were trying to...
Well, I had a couple of them.
Trying to keep them happy?
No. I guess we're always, in a sense, especially when we're young, trying to keep them happy. But it wasn't so costly that, you know, I felt compelled to go out and rob to keep them happy. No, it was day-to-day, you know, expenditures. And you know, one of the things that happened here was, so I moved away from my mom's house. She came to my new place. I was living with some friends. She was like, pack your stuff, come home. I was like, nope, I'm not coming home. You know, I want to party all night. She was like, please come home. I'm like, no, I'm not coming home.
Okay.
So my friend's apartment dissolved because a couple of them ended up moving and so forth and so on. So at the time, there was this place called All Around Suites downtown on River Road, where I could rent
I remember that place, yes.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. I could rent the suite for a week at a time.
Right.
I don't remember what the cost was then, but until I could get my own place, I was, you know, renting by the week.
Yeah.
And it was different for me because I'd never lived like that. Keep that in mind.
Right.
I lived in a stable, fully functional, healthy household my entire life.
Right.
You know, so it's like, this is different, you know, but I got to make sure, you know, I got to have these people money. And, you know, believe it or not, these robberies that I did, they were all petty robberies. You know, there was a sandwich shop, ice cream shop, auto parts store, you know.
So what was the threat? If you're walking in and there's no weapon, what is it that compelled the owner to hand the money over
because
to you?
they never knew that there was not a weapon.
Okay.
They never knew that there wasn't a weapon. You know, when I walk in and I tell you that I have a weapon, in most cases, even today, that's sufficient enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting into your vehicle after leaving church one night and I walk up to you and say, give me everything you got, I'm going to pull a bullet in your head.
Yeah.
You probably will give me everything you got.
Without a hesitation.
You know, just the idea, you know, is sad but true.
So, you're arrested and you're charged and you're in jail and you call your mother and your mother says, I'm not coming to get you. What happens next?
I think that subconsciously I begin to fixate on, okay, I'm going to be here, so I need to get adjusted to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a hard adjustment. It was a hard adjustment because I'm not a thug. I'm not a street guy. I'm not,
right.
You know, this is not really
your world.
Right. You know, so I'm in parish prison, and because I'm charged, back then, I don't know how they do it now, but back then parish prison would place you according to your crime that you were alleged to have committed. And so, you know, armed robbery is, you know, high on the list of, you know, a threat.
Right.
So they put me around these people who are accused of murder and rape and aggravated assault and other, and, you know, we don't speak the same language,
right.
You know, and that's a problem. And you know, because we don't speak the same language, they think, well, we can do this to him, we can do that to him, and you know, homie, don't play that. You know? And you know, and so at some point, I had to realize that, you know, I'm in a different environment, and to some degree, I have to act like the people that are around me. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm gonna be taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. So it was an adjustment. It was hard. It was hard because, keep in mind, I'm 20 years old.
Right.
And you know, I've never experienced this. Now, I had previously, let me back up for a minute. I had previously been arrested for theft from a job that I was at, but I was in jail for an hour or so and went home. So when this happened, I was already on probation for that. Okay. And it was different. It was hard. It was, you know, uncomfortable. It was a challenge. It was a challenge because, you know, I had to change my thinking. Mm-hmm. You know, whereas I was green to things, or where I was not thinking like them, I had to start.
A public defender?
No.
Your mother secured legal?
Yes, my mother and my father secured Edsel Cunningham and Frank Side to represent me.
Okay.
Spent a lot of money, you know.
Yes.
And you know, even today, you know, and some people won't agree with this, but so we were in court one time, and Edsel Cunningham said, you know, they're offering 50, you need to take it. And I said, 50? Who? Where's he at? You know, and my mom's like, take it. Mm-hmm. You know, now mom knew best then. Let me be clear, you know, but I'm a gambling man now. Keep that in mind.
Right.
And mom, you know, I have to listen to you because you're mom, but this is my decision. And you know, I told Edsel Cunningham, I said, you know, I'm not taking 50 years. You know, I can't do that because 50 years meant that I had to spend over 45 in prison.
Yeah.
43 in prison. And you know, I couldn't do that. You know, I couldn't commit. I couldn't willingly say this is what I'll do. Mm-hmm. So no, I didn't have a public defender. Thank God. And, you know, and we can talk about public defenders now a little bit later. But you know, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have came out the same way with a public defender.
So, what was the outcome of your trial?
I did not go to trial. I ended up pleading to 25 years. I pleaded 25 years on one bill of information. I had 3 bills of information. What that is, and for those folks who may not know, in the state of Louisiana, you are billed according to charges, and they're typically speaking. What happens is, in my case, if you're alleged to have committed 21 different acts of something, they'll split them up to different bills depending on when they occurred, what was the time frame in between each one. So in my case, I ended up with 3 bills of information, a total of 21 counts on robbery. But I pled to 25 years, Department of Corrections, with 1 bill of information. How does that affect me? Well, instead of having each bill of information, if I pled to 1 count here, 1 count here, and 1 count here, that would have made me a 3-time loser, if you will, okay? But instead, I pled to 3 counts on 1 bill of information, and so that I don't have separate conviction.
Okay.
And so I pled 25 years.
You spent how much of that time actually in prison?
I spent 16 years, 3 months, 4 days in prison. After I was sentenced, they sent me to prison, of course. And all that time was either spent in prison. The latter part of my sentence, I did go to work release.
Okay.
The last 2 years and some change.
So for those of us who have only heard about what it's like to live in prison, have never spent time in prison. It's funny, I was teaching Bible study just the other night, and I was talking about the fact that people who've never been to prison don't have any idea what it's like to actually live in prison. I've gone to Angola several times on ministerial opportunities. We've held worship services there. I've gone there to counsel with members and what have you. And I can't wait to get out, and I'm only there for an hour and a half. I cannot imagine what it's like to be there knowing that there's no immediate release coming.
Yeah, that's it's hard, It's hard because, so you have a culture shock going from freedom to parish prison to jail, okay? And then there's another culture shock going from jail to prison, know. It's for lack of a better phrase, and I don't even like this term, but I'm gonna use it just so people can relate. It's like going from good to bad to worse. To the person who's actually going through it at that time. It's like, man, so I'm here with these people now, and these people definitely did what they say they did, and I don't live like this, and
right.
So what am I going to do? And it really is. It's a culture shock, but it's livable, it's manageable, but it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and so when you say what is it like living in prison, it's like being in prison. And for me, right? Because the person who's experienced it, for those folks who haven't, it's essentially like, it's like walking into a football field by yourself and you can't get out. Okay, it's expansive. You got all this space, but you can't leave. Yeah. You don't have your cell phones, and it's just it's hard, and it emotionally and mentally. People say this in prison and out of prison. I've heard it, but prison can break you physically, mentally, and emotionally. The physical part, well, that's physical, but the mental and emotional, those are the issues. Those are the things that you have to keep intact, because if you don't keep intact, you will lose your mind. And I'm not telling you what somebody told me or what I heard. I'm telling you what I've seen.
Certainly. Yeah. So, in the time that you're in prison, how did you not just cope? How did you make the transformation, the shift, so that you are now the person that you are today?
When I went to prison, I didn't make a shift initially. My shift was, when in Rome, act like the Romans. And I got into a bunch of trouble, I'm gonna say some things here that even my parents don't know, because we're years later, but we don't talk about it now. But man, I was there's a code of conduct in prison. There's some things you do, and some things you don't do, and some things you definitely bet not do. And I can remember when me first getting to prison, we go out to the field to work, and they call you out to the field by your DOC number. Okay. So if you've been in prison a long time, you're at the front of the line. If you just get into prison, you're at the back of the line, because my number is higher than his number, because he's been here 10 years already. And so we go out in the fields and we work all day, and then we come in, but we come in the same way you go out, okay? Because once you come out the gate, you never leave that position. And I remember a guy, I don't remember his name, but I came in from the field one day, and it was a Friday. No, it was a Wednesday. And me and him had came out the field together. He was ahead of me, but by the time I got to my dormitory, he had already made it into the dormitory, and he was sitting on my bed. Was essentially, are you married, Fred?
Yeah.
Okay. It's essentially like you going out and cutting the grass and you know, cleaning out the trenches in your front yard, and maybe cutting some limbs, and you're all sweaty and dirty, and you come home and you sit on your bed. Your wife will look at you like, excuse me?
Yeah.
You know, something wrong. You need to take that elsewhere. So I walked in, this guy sitting on my bed. We all just come out the field. We're sweaty, we're dirty, we stink. You know, hey man, don't sit on my bed. We just came out the field. He had something to say. He went on about his business. I was on Wednesday. On Friday, he did the same thing. And on Saturday morning, about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I woke him up with a mop wringer. That's uncharacteristic of me. But I understood that me telling him not to, you know, to do this is not working.
Right.
And in this environment, what works is violence. That's the truth, you know, at that time.
Right.
Because when I went to prison was bad for Louisiana. It's not nearly like it is now. It's still bad, but it's a different kind of bad these days. And so initially, I indulged in gambling there, and you know, I didn't mind fighting because I was young and felt like I had a point to prove.
Right.
So it took me about 7 years to really settle down, to really say, okay, we need to straighten this out. Okay. But by that time, I had already, you know, proven myself, right? So I was at a place where ain't nobody messing with me no more. So now I can deal with this like it needs to be dealt with. And it didn't come to me as I just said it to you. It just happened. You know, I didn't have to worry about nobody sitting on my bed no more. I didn't have to worry about nobody disrespecting me, because in prison, that respect is it.
That's the main thing.
Oh, definitely. If you're not respecting me, you have to pay the cost, because if you don't pay the cost, then ultimately I'm going to be subject to the ultimate disrespect. You know, so it's something that happened over time, and they moved me to Elaine Hunt Correctional Center, which is right here in St. Gabriel.
Right.
Best thing ever could have happened to me. I came across a man by the name of Dr. Henry Sanders Jr., who was the educational coordinator. He immediately recognized that, you know, I was intelligent. You know, I was always intelligent, maybe not smart, but I was intelligent. You know, smart people, I tell people, smart people don't get in the back of police cars. Simple. You say you're smart, don't get in the back of a police car. If you do, then you're not smart. You might be intelligent, but you're not smart.
Right. And
so he took me and he gave me all kind of opportunities educationally, because I had something to offer. I was intelligent. And he taught me a lot, and then he enrolled me in school to be a network specialist, an IT specialist. And I developed this love for computers, to be able to make them, to speak their language and make them do what I wanted them to do. And even then, I think that there was, you know, because I was caught up in this thing of manipulation when I went to prison. It was all part of me initially getting arrested. That was part of my lifestyle, just manipulation. And I felt like being able to manipulate the machine to do what I wanted to do was a success. So even then, I think there was still some selfishness in that. But I learned a lot, and then the prison had a little leaflet newsletter, and they wanted to make it into a magazine. And I told the warden, I said, I can do that. You know, he said, well, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, we got to get a bunch of machinery. He said, well, what you need? I said, about $100,000. He said, do it. said, really? Here, let me tell you what all I need.
Yeah.
Gave me an opportunity. I built a magazine called the Walk Talk, Louisiana's Progressive Prison Magazine. It's still standing. It's a beautiful job. The guys that handle it now are way better than I could have ever been. It's a real nice magazine. It's informative. And so we developed that. And then while we were there, we opened up a club, cafe, if you will, for employees and prisoners to get what we call street food, the food that they don't serve in the kitchen.
Okay.
You know? So people could spend their money there. On their lunch breaks, they could come eat. And the prisoners wanted to eat, they could eat every day if they wanted. They had the money. And so I was generating revenue for the prison and for the clubs inside of the prison. And it ultimately led to me spending more time in society than being in prison. While I was locked up, I'd be here at headquarters. I'd travel to help get prisons to run in a similar fashion to Elaine Hunt Correctional Center.
I know, based upon my ministerial experience, that there's a whole lot of religion that goes on behind prison walls. There's worship all day, every day. We talk about heaven being every day being Sunday and Sabbath have no end. That's what it's like in prison. There's worship all day, every day.
That's right.
Multiple worship experiences
That's right.
that go on. When I was serving at Greater Mount Carmel Baptist Church, we went up there every 2 months. First Sunday of the month, we go up there, we'd have a worship experience. Shiloh has a prison ministry that goes to various places, Angola, Hunt, the police barracks, the state police barracks, various places, what have you. From the standpoint of the person behind the prison, receiving all of this religion that people are doing as part of their missionary outreach, as part of their endeavor to try to share the gospel in a sincere manner. Tell me, and I see the way you look at me as I'm formulating this question, tell me how you all received our coming into the prison.
For those folks who have an interest in you all coming to the prison, it's a breath of fresh air. It really is. Now, for those folks that are, playing church, as we say, or, are not sincere, then, it's what they can get out of the situation. Do you know why religion is so big in prison now? Because once upon a time, it wasn't. Do you know why?
Help me.
Bro, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't know whether you were going to say something else.
Yeah, and, and I don't, Burl Cain is Burl Cain and all the things he's been through, but when Burl Cain got to Angola, there was, that was the bloodiest prison in America.
Yes.
Understand that it was, and that's true. You see that newspaper, bloody. No, that's true. It's not, it's not just good reading. It's true. And him and the people around him, to some degree, realized that we need to do something to change this. And somebody, whether it was him or an assistant, or somebody said, we need to really push religion. And that's what they did. Now, the other part of that is, United States Supreme Court says if a man has a certain religion, then you have to make that religion available to him while he's incarcerated. Point blank simple. You can't say, well, we're going to allow, Catholics to worship, but the Baptists can't, or the Jehovah's Witnesses can, or so they don't allow. So the amount of services that you see as a result of, they have to make them available. Religion is a big thing, and religion has helped. I watched it help. I watched this. And sometimes you can get in prison. It's easy to get involved with the right thing for the wrong reason, but get something good out of it. So that's kind of what started that ball to rolling, was because people saw where if I get involved with religion, maybe these people leave me alone, or maybe I can get on a banquet list because the church organizations have banquets sometimes where they come and feed the population. And so there's all kind of wrong reasons to get involved at one time, but now it's really evolved, and it's a big thing. Of course, they have the National Baptist Theological Seminary where these guys actually go to school to
Right.
And I didn't participate in it, but I know plenty of people who have, and some of them are now free.
Right.
You know, and so religion is big in prison because they saw a need to do something about all the blood.
Let me ask you this. Did it have an impact on you? And do you think that it was a positive impact, a neutral impact, a negative impact? What was your experience with it?
When I went to prison, I developed a hardness towards my pastor, okay? And I don't mind saying that in front of Terrence. I won't say his name because I don't want, but I developed a hardness towards him because he told my mother he wasn't coming to see me. And that was, I knew enough to know that that's not right. You know what I'm saying? I knew that, you know, as a man of God and a person who's teaching, you know, you shouldn't turn away from those folk who have done bad. You know, I knew that. If I knew nothing else, I knew that in my mind. I was like, that's not right. And you know, and I kind of looked at Mama like, you still going to this church? Yeah. You know, that's kind of how I felt. Yeah. So I initially had a blind eye to religion when I went into prison. I'll tell you what happened. I got broke. It's ironic because we are 10 days away. On December 24th of 2005, I broke. Okay. And I'll tell you, you know, I tell people talk to me, I talk to people all the time about their kids and their sons and their brothers, people that's having a rough time. And I say, well, you know, sometimes something has to happen to make him change, to make him want better, to break him. And I'll tell you what it was for me. My mother and father came to see me. And in December of 2005, I was housed in extended lockdown at Hunt Correctional Center. And I was housed there because I had been a bad boy, okay? And so that meant when you're housed in extended lockdown that when you have a visitor come to see you, you have to go to them in a jumpsuit and you're shackled on the legs and shackled on the hands, period. December 24, 2005, my stepdad and my mom came to see me. And I often refer to my stepdad as my dad just because I love him that much. Right. So if I say dad versus stepdad, it's talking about the same person. Understood. They came to see me and I got to the table and it was just my dad there. And I said, well, Daddy, where Mama, you know? And he said, she went to the restroom. I said, oh, okay. I sat down, I was talking to him. My mama walked up to the table a few minutes later and she was crying, you know? And I said, well, Mama, what's wrong, you know? And she said, oh, nothing, you know. And that's essentially that, you know, Mama, you lying. You know what I mean? You know, so, Mama, what's wrong? And she said, I just want you to know that I just had to use the bathroom on stainless steel toilet, you know. And I didn't know it at the time, but when you're in extended lockdown, there's a small visiting area, and so your visitors have to use the same bathroom that you use, which in prison, the bathrooms are stainless steel. There's no lid, there's no, you know, everything is stainless steel. Right. And it broke me. And to some folk, that might seem small, but for me, it was like, I brought you in here with me. I made you experience what I experienced, and I might be okay with sitting on a stainless steel toilet, but Mama shouldn't have to do that. And it broke me. It broke me. And I turned to a pastor who I have not found, and I hope that in some way you are aware or can kind of guide me in the direction of how I can find. From Baton Rouge, his name is Oscar Richardson. Because he would come every Sunday. He would come every Sunday. And so that was a Saturday that they came to see me. And that Sunday he came and I went to church. and he captured my heart by the things that he was saying. And I don't remember what he was saying at that time, but me being broken and him delivering such a message that affected me really just made me say, man, you're it, you know. So I hurried up and got out of extended lockdown so that I could go and participate in his services. And I really, so that was my turning point in 2005 as far as religion is concerned. I've always believed in God, and I've always prayed, and I've always had the faith that in some way, you know, he was helping me. But, you know, sometimes when things happen, especially in an environment like that, you know, it's rough. It's rough, you know. So that was my turning point.
So your time incarcerated comes to an end, and you're back out into the world, or however you all would phrase that. How was the adjustment?
For me, it was relatively easy. For most folks, it's not. But keep in mind, while I was incarcerated, I spent a lot of time out here. So it was okay. It was okay for me, and I had just a great support system. You know, that's what made it even easier. You know, because when I went to jail, I'd never changed a flat tire. You know, so when I came home, you know, I'm like, okay, flat tire. The way that I was living, flat tire, call somebody to tell me to come fix it, right? You know, but then you realize that's $50, $60. I just need to change the tire one way or the other. You know, and so. Excuse me. So I turned to my brother and my dad for the stuff inside of the, you know, the physical stuff that I hadn't learned. You know, I turned, you know, and I would call them, and you know, I could hear them thinking, "What is wrong with you?" You know, I remember calling my brother and saying, how do I, you know, change the oil in my car, you know? And I could hear him silently saying, if that makes sense to you, like, dude, really? You know? But before I went to jail, I hadn't experienced any of that. So those things were foreign to me, you know, and I had questions about just how you live, how you do things that, you know, most people wouldn't ask, you know, and sometimes it was embarrassing, but after so long it became easy because I had to explain to him, listen, man, I don't know this stuff.
I haven't done this.
Yeah, you know, I don't know this stuff. So, you know, you can't give me a swing set and say, put it together. That's not gonna work. You know, it's not. Give me a computer, I'll tell it what to do.
Exactly.
But if you give me this table and say, Tim, assemble this, I'm like, well, I'm gonna get somebody over here, you know, because it was foreign to me.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it was difficult. But as far as, you know, what's what and what's here and what's there and how, for the most part, it was easy.
Did you have difficulty getting employment? You hear all the time about people coming out of prison and they have a hard time finding gainful employment.
Well,
what was your situation like?
Well, my situation was initially when I got out of work release, I was in work release in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I was working 3 jobs while I was in work release. Because in work release, they take a whole lot of your money and they leave you with a little bit and expect you to be able to have money saved up. So when you walk out the gate, not true. In fact, it's straight BS.
Thievery.
Yeah, there you go. You know, so I worked 3 jobs. I worked at Burger King. I worked at Outback. I worked at Burger King as just an employee. At Outback Steakhouse as a server. And then I worked at a place called Power Hydraulics, who sold coiled tubing units to offshore companies. Multi-million-dollar operation. They got me for cheap. But I always had the ability to push and promote and market. And so when I started there, they started me sweeping around the shop, just kind of cleaning up behind the other guys, and eventually I worked my way up. So when I got out of work release, out of prison, so to speak, I still had that job, but this was in 2015 when the oil industry had just taken a big hit. And so the owner was like, Tim, at some point, I'm gonna have to let you go. I know you're just getting home. I'm gonna stretch you out as long as I can, but all these other folks have been here way longer than you. So I was like, okay, fine. So I left him and my best friend, who who served 20 years right on alongside of me. He said, "Hey man, why don't you come back home, Baton Rouge?" Because I was living in Lake Charles with a girl that I had met while I was locked up and manipulated her to be with me, and, you know, so to speak. And I said, "Man, I don't mind coming to Baton Rouge, but I got to be able to make some money. You know, the one thing I know is I got to have money, even because it takes money to survive, but not having money is what got me into this situation."
Right.
You know, and I'm not saying that I'm willing to go back, but I don't even want to put myself in a position where it's a inkling of a thought. You know, I don't want that for me. So I got to work, and I don't mind working, but I need to know that she gonna pay me. And so anyway, man, so I needed a job, and Attorney Gail Ray hired me. She knew what I had done in prison. She knew, that I had, done some good things, not just for me, but for the people that I was surrounded by. And she single-handedly brought me to Baton Rouge. And when I say single-handedly, she made it very, very easy. She didn't just say, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a job." She said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a job. I'm gonna put you in your own place. I'm gonna make sure you have furniture. I'm gonna make sure you got money in the account." That's what she did. That's
tremendous.
Employers don't do that. That's the first thing, okay?
Right.
But we're talking about someone who has a love for people, especially people who are coming out of prison because of the wall that they have to climb, what they're up against.
Right.
And she probably would hate that I'm giving that kind of information out, because she don't, she's very humble. But, just that alone was enough for me to say, "Excuse me, so you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and I'm on the way." And that's literally what happened, because I had a job offer in Lake Charles before she made me that offer. I had a job offer for a furniture company in Lake Charles, and I met with the owner. I sent him my resume, and he saw, "Man, you know all of this, you can do all of this, you got to be lying. No, you coming out of prison? Ain't no way." I said, "Put me in front of the computer, I'll show you." He put me in front of the computer for 2 hours. And when I was done, he was like, "Wow, okay, let's go have lunch." So when we went to have lunch, he said, "Well, look, I want you to come work for me. I'll pay you this." I said, "Okay, well, that's a fair salary in my mind at the time." I said, "That's a fair salary, because I'm looking at it as, well, I'm a convicted felon, so I have to take a cut, right?" And I said, "Well, what would my job be? What's my duties? What you expect of me?" He said, "Whatever I tell you to do." And I got up and walked away from the table. We were in the finest restaurant in Lake Charles. I can't remember the name of it, but it's right off the 210. And I couldn't believe that he told me that. He told me that my responsibilities would be whatever he told me to do. And I left him sitting at that table. Not because I have a problem with open list of responsibilities, but I have a problem with you thinking that because I'm a convicted felon, you can pay me mediocre pay and expect me to do whatever you tell me to do. See, it's different from Fred Smith saying, "Tim, I can't tell you everything I'm gonna need you to do, but whatever I need you to do, I'm gonna count on you." And this man saying, "Whatever I tell you to do," there's a difference.
I understand.
And I left him there. And I never spoke with him again. So I came here and I worked for, she put me to work for a law firm, just doing clerical stuff, managing the office, getting things in order. And it took off. It took off because she saw what I could do, and that's why I'm always thankful. You see in my bio, I mentioned Dr. Henry Sanders Jr., white guy, 60-ish. Out of 3,000 people at Hunt Correctional Center, he chose me. I'm forever grateful for that, because he didn't have to. And when I say he opened up those doors, he opened up those doors. And so when I got to Gail's office, it was like, "Hey, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this." She was like, "Oh, slow down. But I was eager to show, because I felt like I need to prove to you what I can do so I can, get the pay that I want and get the credit that I want, because I know what I can do. But some of the things, I was moving too fast for her, because she's thinking, "Well, no, not yet. Just hold off. Just calm down. And she was right. She was right. You know, if you take your time and do things right, then in the end, you know, it'll all come together. Mm-hmm. And so I started off doing clerical work, and then I became her pre-trial and trial investigator and coordinator, kind of helped bring everything together before she went to criminal trials. And then I became her assistant for personal injury cases. Mm-hmm. So now I'm versed in criminal, I'm versed in civil, and I still have these slew of skills that I attained while I was in prison. Mm-hmm. Some of which we talked about. So it wasn't hard for me. Most folk don't have that opportunity. Most folk coming out of prison, they don't get all those things that she said she would do for me. Mm-hmm. People don't lay that out. They just don't. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's they can't afford to, they don't, you know, or they don't trust you. They don't know if you're going right back. They don't, you know. And this lady, I have become her legal and personal assistant. I mean, and I tell my fiance all the time, I love her to death, and she's like, well, let's go see a movie. I'm like, not tonight. This is Saturday night. She's like, you got to work tonight? I'm like, yeah, I got to work tonight. I work 24 hours, 7 days a week. When Gail Ray say I need this, that's what it is, and it is not. I feel good doing that. Mm-hmm. I feel good when she calls me in the middle of the night and say, "Hey, I got a problem. Can you come help me with it?" Yes, indeed, I can, mm-hmm. because I'm forever mindful of just how easy you made it for me. Mm-hmm. But like you said, a lot of people say, "Well, there's problems with getting employment when you come out of prison." There is, mm-hmm. there is, and I'll bring it home. 2 weeks ago, I was looking for a part-time night job, just because I'm going into the new year with some goals, mm-hmm. some things that I want to accomplish. And I said, well, I want to work 4-5 hours a night for 3-4 nights a week, you know. And I went to Walmart. I went to Albertsons. I went to Kohl's. I went to Home Goods, a couple other places. Because I knew, the first thing is, I knew that you're not going to hire me for my skill set. You're going to hire me to take truck boxes off a truck. I don't have a problem with that. Right. I can do anything, you know. Right. But I needed somewhere that was willing to hire me just because I want to supplement my income. So I wasn't looking for an office job at night. I was looking for something just to help me. Every one of them denied me. Okay. Now, I'm still looking for a part-time job at night. But every one of them denied me. No one said, we're denying you because of your conviction. Mind you, at this point, my conviction is 20 years old, okay? But that's what it is. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, and so employment, coming out of prison and as it relates to employment is twofold. One, the person who's coming out of prison has to have used that time to develop some type of skill. Mm-hmm. And two, the employer who sees the person coming out of prison seeking a job has to be willing to give him a job, to give him an opportunity. And I think we have problems with some folk coming out of prison that haven't done the right thing while they was there. Right. Okay? And we have a bunch of problems over here with employers not willing to give people opportunities. And don't get me wrong, in Baton Rouge, they got people that do hire convicted felons. Jerry Lane hires convicted felons. I'm just going to name a few places that I know. There are a bunch of places in West Baton Rouge that hires convicted felons. I know these restaurants do. The Council on Aging, mm-hmm. you know, those folks are doing a great job over there, and they have hired convicted felons. Mm-hmm. And they still are hiring convicted felons. Mm-hmm. You know, we need more people like the Council on Aging and Jared Lane, and you know, because if I come out of prison, let's say I'm 41 now, but let's say I'm 31. Because mm-hmm. the average person that goes to prison, I think, is 22 with a 5th grade education, and he comes out of prison at 30 years old, and he has 2 kids. And the only place he can get hired is McDonald's. Why should we think that he's going to be okay? Because he's not. It's not going to happen. McDonald's is not going to pay him enough to provide for himself, let mm-hmm. alone his two kids. Mm-hmm. And then we wonder why stuff like the child support, he's behind in child support,
Right.
or he don't have a house. Well, you got to give him an opportunity, but he has to have the skill set too.
Right.
And so if he don't have the skill set and you ain't willing to give him a job, he's stuck. And so now what you're looking at is this person coming around your house in the middle of the night because he's looking for a way to come up. Because he don't, either he got the skill set and hadn't got the job, or he don't have the skill set and can't get the job.
Come January, February, laws have been changed that will allow for convicted felons under certain circumstances to be given the opportunity to vote again. Are you happy about that?
I'm elated about it. In fact, we went to Orlando, Florida, about 4 months ago to help push that there and here. It's sad that Louisiana is so far behind. We're one of 2 states in the United States that previously would not allow convicted felons to vote. That's a clear indication of how antiquated our system is. I'm on parole till May of this year coming, and I can't wait to vote. I can't wait. Just and it doesn't. I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter who you vote for. You have a right to decide who you're gonna vote for. But that is a right. You need to exercise it. So yes, I'm very happy about that. And it was. It's people like, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Norris Henderson, who was the president of Vote, Voices of the Experience out in New Orleans, Louisiana. Him and Chico Yancey work together. They have an office here in Baton Rouge too, but it's people like the coalitions that they built to help get that done. But it shouldn't have taken so long. It shouldn't have taken so long. Even if we look at the packages that the governor submitted for last legislative session, to change some of the sentencing laws and parole eligibility for people who are locked up. A lot of that was chopped down by the Sheriff's Association, district attorneys, so forth and so on. And so they put together this nice little pretty package that affected less people than it should have affected, just to get something passed. But most laws that change regarding convicted felons only apply to those people who are nonviolent. Well, most of the people that are incarcerated are violent or have been convicted of violent offenses. While Louisiana is doing better, we still got a way to go to really try to get this thing back on track.
When you look at the political picture, and I'm more concerned about local politics. Everybody is up in arms with the president and things that are going on in Washington. I don't know why you voted for him. You put him in office.
Okay.
And I think that you knew what you were doing when you put him in office. So why you're shocked and appalled at this point is a little bit beyond me. I'm far more interested in local politics, and I know that you have some experience working with state legislators and working in local politics. How would you gauge the environment with regard to the poor and the marginalized in our community from a political standpoint?
From a political standpoint, it has been and it still is an issue. Forgive me if I seemingly tie your questions to incarceration, but in most cases they directly reflect, incarceration.
Sure.
And the poor, the minorities, the poor are the people who are in prison, and they are there because they haven't. In a lot of cases, they haven't had the opportunities that they could have had in order to succeed in life. Baton Rouge is bad. Yes, I've worked with State Representative C. Denise Marcel. I've served as her legislative assistant for over a year, and of course, she's a trooper. She's She's a real go-getter. She don't care what you think. She gonna tell you what she think, and she gonna do everything she can to help black folk. You know, and I don't mind saying that. I like that because I believe that that we the people that in most cases need the most help. You know, but I think that that is an issue that has plagued not just the city but the state for a very long time. And the only way that we can get out of that is to give more opportunities to more folk, whether they're incarcerated or convicted felons or not, and understand that that just because someone doesn't look like us doesn't mean that we can't sit at the table with them and try to work this thing out. There are a lot of people that I've seen, that I've come across, that are good people and have skills, but haven't had the opportunities that you or he or the next person may have had. And we really need to get away from that. Unfortunately, we've said we really need to get away from that for a very long time, and it hasn't happened.
Part of the problem is, as I view it, is for the most part, blacks that are upwardly mobile work for somebody else. There's not a whole lot of entrepreneurship. We get a middle management job working for a firm or some industry. We make a good living. We get our families situated and what have you, but we do not have the ability to pull somebody else up with us because we are not the final decision makers. That lack of entrepreneurship, that lack of autonomy when it comes to who we help and how we help them and to what lengths we go to help them. What you described happened in your case. Not very many people have the ability to do what was done on your behalf. So if we're stuck is the wrong word. If we're in a middle management job where we're earning $100,000, $125,000 a year, we're doing well. Our families are doing well, but we can't translate that into helping somebody else who needs help, who we may want to help, but we just don't have the opportunity to do that.
It's ironic that we're having that conversation because I just talked to somebody a couple of days ago, and we were talking about the workforce and how it affects people, and specifically me. And they said, well, I'd like to see you open your own business. And I said, well, I would like to open my own business, but you have to have the capital to do that.
Right.
And most poor folks don't have good credit.
Right.
Because they've been poor all their life. So when they could get a little loan, we hadn't paid it back, or we didn't paid it back when we could, and it's so I think it's a good thing that if we can get more black-owned businesses. Or even more grants to people who want to open businesses. It's just it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
it appears to me.
Yeah,
I haven't tried to open my own business yet. But.
And I often one get frustrated with conservative white folk who sit up in their ivory towers and with a tone of patriarchy. Look down and say, well, all you got to do is, and there's nothing that comes after all you got to do that makes any sense. Because unless you've been black or brown or poor,
you don't know what it's like.
There's nothing else that you can say after all you got to do that makes any sense.
That's right.
And part of my dilemma as I reach the age that I am, I'm rapidly approaching 60, I'm tired of trying to explain it to folk. I get very frustrated with me trying to justify my anger, my frustration. Why are you so angry? Deal with what we have had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And constantly be told, well, I wish I could. We'd love to have you, but we're not in a position to do this at this time. Come back and check with us in 3 months, and we might be able to do something for you at that time. We check your credit score, and while you seem like a very nice guy, your credit score really needs some work. So if you spend some time bringing your credit score up, then come back and maybe we can talk about that loan with you. We'd love to have you move into this neighborhood, but your score doesn't allow for us to sell you this house at this time. Now, if you're willing to pay 20% down payment instead of a 5% down payment that we gave to the white folk who just bought the house down the street, then maybe we can help you. But I just found out that you don't actually have the income to pay the 20% down. So as soon as you can save a little bit more money, we'd be more than happy to have you. People get tired of constantly being turned away with a smile.
Yeah, with a smile. With a smile. That's
and when they have dismissed you, then they move on with the rest of their lives, and you are left in the same situation that you were in before.
Tell you something real quick, Fred. A month and a half ago, I decided, so when I came home, I got an apartment. It was a little cheap 1-bedroom. And I lived there for 3 years, you know. It was cheap rent, and I didn't have any problems, but the neighborhood got progressively worse. Mm-hmm. And my lady was like, all right, we need to get out of here because, you know, you're on parole, and if you end up doing something to one of these dudes and yada, yada. So we ended up trying to move, and I went to an apartment complex, and they were nice apartments. And I applied, but I hadn't really established, even in 3 years, I hadn't established a whole lot of credit. I got a car's in my dad's name. He co-signed for me. You know, I got a credit card, bank account, but nothing, no real credit. Mm-hmm. And for almost 17 years, I didn't have none. So lady said, well, due to your credit, you know, your deposit, which would normally be this, you know, the only way I can get you in is if you double. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
All right, you know, but and so when you said that a few minutes ago, I was like, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because I just went through it. And I returned with the double. We were having a conversation face to face. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to have to see and I'll get back with you. And I just came back with the money order. And, you know, and the look on her face was, you know, was if I didn't think you'd be back.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But yeah, that's something, you know, but I don't know that it's going to stop, you know, because I think generations have to die off for that to happen. And, you know, I would love to be here to see the you know, the outcome of that, but I don't know that I will be. But, you know, that's inbred in the minds and the ways of folk in Louisiana.
There needs to be a revival of entrepreneurship within our communities. I, for one, have no way of knowing how to cause that revival to happen, but I can certainly see where there's a need for it. We used to own our own businesses a generation ago, a couple of generations ago.
Especially around here.
Yeah, we owned our own businesses. We made our own living. We made our own communities. We had our own lending sources. We didn't have to go to other folk in order to borrow money. And a lot of it was done not just based upon an objective thing like a credit score, but I know who your mama is, or I know who your granddaddy is, and if you don't pay me back, I'm going to talk to them, and they're going to make sure that you pay me back my money. That kind of nostalgia, as some people would call it, needs to make a return for us to move to the next level within our communities. Let me turn the page. We're getting close to the end of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, believe it or not, we've been here about an hour.
Oh, okay. All right.
But you said, well, two things I want to get to. You made mention of something earlier on when I asked you about public defender versus a private attorney, and you said that we could revisit that. So let's revisit that right quick.
Okay.
What's your idea about public defenders?
This is
Understand, my sister is an attorney.
Okay.
She
Criminal?
worked on criminal,
Okay.
but she's a prosecutor.
Okay.
She worked for the DA's office in Orleans Parish, worked for the DA's office in East Baton Rouge Parish. Currently, she works for the Attorney General.
Okay.
So I have this argument about lawyers all the time. Mm-hmm. But tell me your views on public defenders.
I think that there's this misconception that public defenders, that you shouldn't have a public defender representing you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mike Mitchell is the head of the public defender's office here in East Baton Rouge Parish.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know him, he's a real good person. And he employs these people to take on the caseloads of the parish.
Mm-hmm.
All right. These folk have went to school. They have taken the bar.
Mm-hmm.
They have passed the bar. Okay. And just because they work for the public defender's office doesn't mean that they are not equipped to get the job done.
Right.
People think that, oh no, I don't want a public defender because a public defender is not gonna do what I need them to do. That's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that public defenders are overworked and underpaid. Their caseload is so heavy to where if I try to call Fred, who's my public defender, and he can't take my call, or I don't hear back from him for a week, then I feel like he's not working. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not working. It means that he got a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
You know, and so because people will call the office and say, well, you know, I'd like for Gail to represent my son because he got a public defender right now, and you know, and I said, okay, well, you know, representation for your son is gonna be $10,000, and they're like, well, can I give you $1,000 now? You know, can I give you $1,000?
Then you want the kinfolk deal. Come on, brother. You know, come on, sister.
But understand that the person who is representing your son is just as qualified as Gail is.
Yes.
You know, and this is what she will say.
Yes.
You know, because we are reflections of her as it relates to work. And, you know, she tell folk that just because, you know, he worked for the public defense office don't mean he can't get the job done.
Right.
Now, yeah, you might, you know, if you pay an attorney to take care of something, you know, they may move expeditiously because, you know, you are paying them, their client, or they may not. You know, it just depends. But people think that having a public defender, there's a bad, you know, it's not a good thing. That's not the case. You know, if you have a public defender, that's what they're there. They're there to represent the people who cannot afford to hire a private attorney.
Right.
Bottom line. And you know, ain't nothing wrong with giving them folk a try. Now, if you got a bad situation and you feel like you need, you know, a hotshot lawyer to come in and try to, you know, get a good plea deal or a good trial lawyer, then call Gail Ray. We'll take care of it. Not a problem.
Right.
You know.
You're out of the prison system. You said you're still on parole until May, but for the most part, you're out of the prison system.
Yeah, I go in there.
So you're not bombarded with religion all day, every day, as you once were. As a private citizen, what role, if any, does the church play in your life today?
A lot of the people that walked with me through my journey are still there, like his parents. You know, I saw them about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Still call them, still talk to them. They helped me, and they're most of those folks that I'm talking about, I grew up in the church with. Today, the church is not as supreme in my life as it should be. Mostly because I haven't found what I'm looking for. And only I know what I'm looking for. I know what I'm not looking for. So I've been to a few places. You know, we've been to a few places. But the church is a for me, the church is a matter. It's a place of refuge. When it seems like, you know, all is lost, all is wrong. When it seems like things are not the way I want them to be. When it seems like I can't get it right, or when it seems like, you know, tomorrow may never come. It's a place for me, and I say the church. I don't mean the physical structure. But it's a place for me to go to say, you know, thank you, and to say, you know, I need you, and I'm counting on you, and tell me where to go, tell me what to do. Because believe it or not, you know, when two things before we get off of this or close out or whatever, you know, my mama used to tell me every day. When I was in prison, I talked to my mama every day. except for when I was mad and wouldn't call home. She couldn't call me, of course. She'd tell me every day, I'm praying and asking God to let me see you walk out of prison. That was her prayer every day. And I never questioned it. You know, I knew that when she said it, it was true. And now when I pray, you know, aside from thanking the Lord, I always ask him to let me be the person to help someone who needs to be helped. Because for so long I took away from the community. I took away from the people. So that's that. My physically, I'm not. You know, I don't travel to church every Sunday and Tuesday for Bible study. You know, but I certainly have a relationship with Christ, and I certainly try to use my life as a not just a testament, but also as a way, a vessel to be helpful to people. Because as his father told me, and I put this in my bio, he didn't catch it because he don't know anything about it, but his father wrote me a letter. It was in 2002, and he said, Tim, please pray for me, for no matter where we are, we're all in the same boat. That was the last line of a one-page letter typed many moons ago. And I live by that, you know, because, you know, whether you have your own business and you have a bunch of money, you have a big family, and you seem to be successful, or you're locked away in prison, we all need prayer. We all need one another at some point, and we all need to be there for one another. Because if we're not, then all we're doing is making history repeat itself.
If I were to ask you, as someone who has come through the prison system, what could the church do better? What could we do that would be more effective, more impactful for those who are still incarcerated and for those who are now out of the system and trying to reestablish themselves in the world? How would you respond to that?
As far as those folk who are out here, I think that, you know, one of the greatest things that you can do, the same thing you just said, you know, offer employment, offer resources. I'm president of Reentry Court Solutions of Greater Baton Rouge under the leadership of Trudy White. I'm the president, but what we do is try to make sure transitions are smooth. It may not be as smooth as Gail Ray made mine, but we want to try to help. So for people coming out, that's definitely a way for the church to help. You know, you need this, you need that. What do you need? You know, you need employment, and that's the biggest thing, employment. You know, so you can hire somebody and pay them something fat. You know, and people's budgets are different, but you know, you catch a person walking out of jail and you say, hey, I'll give you a job sweeping around the church and mopping floors, and I'll pay you $750 an hour, $8,000 an hour. He's not gonna make it. He's not going to make it, Fred. It's just point blank. He's going to have to do something else. And what is that something else? We don't know until he does it, right? We don't know if it's get another job or if it's go hustle. Right. You know, so, you know, employment at a fair rate so that he can make it is important. For the people in jail, keep delivering the word. Keep saving lives, you know. And that's it, because anything else is it's honey for bees, you know. And there's nothing wrong with honey. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of that in there, you know. So I wouldn't suggest the honey, but, you know, just keep doing what the Lord intended for you to do, and that's to go in there and to tell him about it, and tell him that he loves him, and tell him that when things is bad and things are rough and you think you ain't going home, or you haven't seen your family in 2 years, or you haven't got a letter and mail call, or you haven't been to the commissary because ain't nobody sending your money, that at the end of the night, you know, at the end of the day, ain't nothing wrong with still saying thank you, Lord. That's the best thing that you can do. All that other stuff, you know, it's pretty like this, you know, but that's not what those folks want, because, you know, you should be surprised if you walk down a tier in prison where there's 20 beds on each side and there's a hall, a little, walkway in between those two. I'm sure you've seen them. You'd be surprised late at night how many covers are overheads. You can't see them. That's because they crying.
Yeah.
That's because they hurt.
Yeah.
That's because the realization of what I did is I'm facing that music now.
Yeah.
And I ain't got nobody but him, because these folk around here mean me no good. So keep giving the word.
Yes,
That's the best thing that you can do, and do it consistently, like Oscar Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently, let them see you, because coming once a month, once every 3-4 months, that means very little. But if I see you on a regular, then I know your heart is real, because that's what we do in prison. Well, he come every month. Okay, I ain't seen him in 6-7 months now. I mean, and that's what they looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Because just like some of them are playing church that were in prison, they see.
They figure some of us playing church too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I always ask this question of every guest that I have because I love Baton Rouge. I'm born and raised here. Spent a little time in New Orleans. I always called New Orleans Egypt, and the Lord let me come back home to the Promised Land. But I find that some people don't have the same love for my city that I do. 41 years old. Would you like to spend the rest of your life in Baton Rouge?
I would love to spend the rest of my life in Baton Rouge. And the only reason why, because if you'd asked me this while I was in prison, I'd say, no, indeed. Or before then, no, indeed. But I do now, because I see the growth, I see the, Terica Williams made it in spite of. In spite of what y'all tried to do the day before. I see the Denise Marcells, I see the Tasha Moore Clark's council agent, James Gill Moore council agent. I see the Gail Rays, the Ike Thomases, the people who can help make this thing turn, and yeah, I would. I plan to, I plan to be here, and the only way that I don't see myself leaving, because to leave to me would be to turn it back, not just on my city, but on my family too, because my family's here. But I got big plans as far as entrepreneurship is concerned for Baton Rouge. So, no, I'll be here. I'll be here.
That's good to hear.
Without a doubt.
You'd be amazed how many times I've asked that question, and the answer was no. We're just passing through. We're going to settle someplace else. So it's good to hear that you're thinking about making Baton Rouge your home, your base.
Always been.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate your honesty. And I'm sure that you have been helpful to a lot of people, and I know you've been helpful to me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you as well as Terrence. And if in any way I can be of help to you and the church, please let me know.
I will. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next time.